Let me start off this section by saying I am truly sorry to Tribes fans. Your franchise does not deserve this, and the IP should be in the hands of someone who will actually do something with the property. Tribes Ascend, the 5th game in a rather unique series. Just imagine Quake had no brakes. Tribes' core gameplay was centered around the player's ability to ski. With the press of a button, the player would start to slide, relying on their momentum for movement with an added-in jetpack to climb slopes. This combined for a gameplay experience that few games have emulated since. Combine this with projectile-based weaponry, and a game truly relying on one's skill to improve and dominate was born. But onto Ascend specifically. An open beta for the game was held in February 2012, and it was received fairly well. The game featured 3 different armor types which had 4 classes each, multiple game modes even though the focus on Tribes has always been on capture the flag, a number of maps, and that sweet speed. The beta launch wasn't exactly perfect though. The balance was all over the place. Sentinel's sniping capabilities were not only useful but apparently dangerously close to overpowered due to the openness of the maps. Apparently Infiltrator and his invisibility were pretty good too. The game had a terrible tutorial as well, only really teaching the players how to ski and not about the game's class systems or even that capture the flag was the main game mode. There were also bugs. Quite a number of them, but in a beta that's to be expected I suppose. What wasn't expected in the beta were the number of changes that were being made weekly until the game's release. One of these had been a heavily praised class reduction from 12 to 9, and another being the removal of a speed cap, a sin in these types of games. Fast forward a month to April, and Tribes was officially released to critical acclaim. Hi-Rez essentially flipped their design of global agenda, reducing the scale of the game massively and focusing on Tribes' core aspects. That means that the launch of Tribes had a large amount of content, including 5 game modes, 21 maps, and a plethora of weapons for each class. This new direction clearly worked, since Hi-Rez saw an influx of around 800,000 players in 1 month when the game launched. There was another thing that came with the official release however, which would be the game's first controversy. Ascend had 2 currency systems, XP, which was earned by playing, and Gold, which was the premium currency. The game gave new players 3 of the 9 classes, the other 6 being unlockable through grinding or a premium purchase with the weapons following the same method. The problem? The grind was extreme. Like seriously, the amount of average hours it would take to simply unlock something was absolutely absurd. We're talking like a 5-hour grind for the priciest classes, but it doesn't end there. Weapons cost either 42,000 or 75,000 XP, or even 100,000 XP. That means that grinds lasting past 30 hours were required to unlock weapons. Like, I don't even know what to say. How could you mess this up so badly? This was an issue on its own, but the state of balance was also messed up on release. The kind of unbalance which gives players a blatant advantage if they use certain weapons or classes, which gave the game a pay-to-win outlook. I don't think Hi-Rez intentionally tried to scam players. Even to this day, look at Evolve's DLC on release, or Battlefront 2's loot box controversy. Now that's malicious intent. Hi-Rez just don't know what they're doing. Which is arguably worse. These issues would be later addressed in the following updates, as Hi-Rez were releasing them every month, including new weapons, maps, and tweaks to game mechanics. This was until September of the same year, where the updates suddenly stopped. At the time, the Tribes community thought that Hi-Rez were pulling a global agenda on them, as during Tribes development, Smite was released into its early beta to huge success. 900,000 players were registered before the open beta was even available. But let's go back a bit and talk about how we got to this point. What happened over that 7-month period? A lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff. Where do I even begin? Let's start with the player bans that were happening at launch. The player suspension system that Hi-Rez had in place at launch would only factor in how many reports that a player had received from other players, meaning that if you were too good at the game and came across some salty players, it looks like you're taking a break. Hi-Rez of course denied this, like they did in Smite, but we all know the truth. Banning players using robots is so boring though. It would be so much more fun if Hi-Rez employees were falsely banning players. APC, why are you the way that you are? New weapons being gifted every month sounds like a positive, but with the state that they were seemingly always released in, I think the player base wouldn't have minded waiting a bit longer. They were always overpowered and took too long to be addressed. Early on there was a period where grenades were really good, and dare I even mention the plasma rifle with its award-winning hitbox detection technology also utilised in Paladins? How did it even end up like this? Probably server issues. Oh yeah, the server issues. The ones that were never fixed. There were huge latency problems in this game. It got to a point where someone on Reddit was compiling lists of all the complaints people were making. Don't worry though, my little tribelets, I can call you that, right? Because there are horrific server problems in every Hi-Rez game. And in case you're wondering, no, support for private servers was never added. You could rent a server from Hi-Rez, though this is hardly a satisfactory solution considering it was just throwing more money into a pit of fire. Speaking of money, the cosmetics that were available seemed more directed towards people willing to dump hefty amounts of currency on the title, rather than making them accessible price tag wise to the majority of the player base. Another aspect which would later appear in every single Hi-Rez game. What else did they do? Oh yeah, some really fast routes were being found on Capture the Flag. We're talking really optimized stuff. In response to this, rather than educating players that maybe blocking these routes with some manpower would be a good idea, they instead re-implemented the speed limiter when you carry the flag. You can imagine how that went down in a game about speed. What else? Oh yeah, after the player base thought that they had been abandoned, and rightfully so, Hi-Rez made the incredibly insightful decision to close down the tribes section of their official forums, deciding to use the Reddit r/tribes as their main hub instead. The community outrage was on another level. Keep in mind, this is after the tribes community had already assigned Hi-Rez the title of Worst Developer period, so this was just more fuel in the fire, especially since Hi-Rez just kinda forced this on the subreddit without even consulting the moderators first. This got to the point of the community considering banning all Hi-Rez personnel from the subreddit. Although this plan never fell through with the mods, the statement it made was clear as day. Hi-Rez abandoned them, so they'll abandon Hi-Rez. And on top of all that, they never released those map-making tools. Okay, that's a lot of stuff going wrong. But now we need to turn the clock forward some more, to February 2013, where the Game of the Year update was released, coming with 10 new maps and a weapon. All thanks to Smite, as Hi-Rez says. I bet Tribes players were happy about that. Like one other patch came after that, and in July of 2013, Hi-Rez announced that Ascend would not be getting an update for at least 6 months, so the development team could focus more on Smite instead. I don't even think the community was surprised by the news at this point. By now, they had gone through the entire Hi-Rez cycle, but I suppose there is one more particularly controversial PR disaster. Remember that Reddit post of all the server issues I mentioned earlier? Well, one comment made fun of the state that Tribes was in, and told everyone to buy the $50 Smite God Pack and play that instead. Hi-Rez Bart, in response, corrected him, saying it was $29.99. Maybe not the best move. Maybe being snarky at a very tense community wasn't the best move. Yeah, the responses here speak for themselves. Hi-Rez APC also decided to inject himself into the controversy like a sexually frustrated parasite, egging on the community some more. If it makes you guys feel any better, he was punished later in life. I don't think they ever took the community seriously. They're all just dollar signs. It's always the community's fault and not theirs. Nothing but trollish responses to threads just trying to help them understand. In December 2015, the Out of the Blue update came to Tribes, a bit over 2 years after the last update. I would go over it in detail, but at this point, I really don't think any players of the game who left would have thought about coming back because of this. I've heard opinions saying this update both ruined the game and made it better, but I don't think anyone really cares anymore. Hi-Rez just updated it as a PR move. That is all Global Agenda and Tribes are to Hi-Rez. PR. In October 2018, Tribes Ascend was finally delisted from the Steam store, and with Hi-Rez still in possession of the Tribes license, it is very unlikely that another installment in the franchise will be released, unless it's some sort of cash grab like most of their IP spin-offs. Tribes didn't deserve this. No one who got invested in this title deserved this. The players didn't code the game. They don't make the assets, or choose the engine, or the development methodology, or set up the servers, or decide that the game's development should cease, or that this Tribes was somehow more important than the other Tribes games. I guess to clear things up on their end, Hi-Rez employees did release statements as to why they ultimately had to leave Tribes. Let's see here, Hi-Rez received exceptional reviews, we kept adding features and content, but just like Global Agenda, the user base kept declining no matter what we did. Are you kidding me? Have you ever considered that maybe it was your fault? You didn't so much take the sick dog out back to put it down, more so left it on the side of the motorway and drove away with your new favourite pooch. The FPS Z genre is dead, and Hi-Rez killed it, and then midair jumped over its corpse and tripped.